Hello and welcome to my presentation about what every presenter needs. The first thing you need as a presenter is a title. The title needs to describe the topic and scope of your presentation. Most presenters are really good at showing what the topic is, but most usually fail to explain what the scope is. So for example, let's suppose you are giving a presentation about the motion of planetary objects under the influence of gravity, right? That's a wonderful topic, but what's the scope of it? Are you talking about the planets in our solar system? Are you talking about a particular exoplanet? Are you talking about a toy solar system model that you've created? Are you reporting observations? Are you reporting a simulation? What is the actual thing you're doing with the topic? If you can get both of those, the topic and the scope, then you've got a really good title on your hands. You almost always want to include the name of the presenters. That's you and anyone else you're presenting with, or anyone else that helped you do your research and come up with the presentation. Another thing that really every presenter needs these days is a way of giving your viewers your slides. People do not have time or bandwidth to take down notes on everything you say, and it's really not necessary for them to, because you should have your slides available electronically over the internet. One easy way to do that is to set up a QR code. You just Google QR code generator, put in the link to your presentation slide deck, and it will generate for you a QR code that people can scan with their mobile device and get the presentation right there on their phone that they can then go home and read later. You can include a URL if you want, but that means people have to sit there and write out the URL or try to focus their camera to get a picture of the URL. QR codes seem to work the best. I welcome other suggestions for other ways in the comments below. So this is my outline of what you need as a presenter. We already talked about you need a title slide. We already talked about that. Next, we're going to talk about how you need an outline slide. Every presentation needs an outline slide. There are no presentations that can get away with not having an outline slide. An outline slide is the first step in the 3 steps of public speaking. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. The outline slide is essential because it shows all the major points that you're going to be talking about for the next 5 to 50 minutes. Making an outline slide is incredibly easy. Just make the rest of your presentation, take the main slide titles that occur throughout your presentation, and make each of those titles a bullet point here on your outline slide. Boom, you have an instant outline slide. After we're done talking about outline slides, in just a minute at the end of this slide, we're going to talk about a few things that you need to know. You need to know that your audience is interested. This is the primary piece of motivation that I find is missing from most new presenters and a few established presenters. We're going to talk about how you need to use the slides as your notes. This is somewhat subject specific, but in the physics, math, and engineering world, we really don't present off of note cards. We present off of our slides. I'm going to talk about how you need to follow the 8x8 rule. I'm going to talk about how you need visuals. Finally, I'm going to talk about how you need to end well, getting back to that 3rd step of tell them what you told them. I am now finished with my outline slide, so I will now move on to my main topics. The first of which is know that your audience is interested in. I really find that this is the thing that makes or breaks a good presentation, is whether the presenter believes that the audience is interested in what they have to say. Here's the general rule. No one is going to attend your presentation unless they are interested in it. They have better things to do with their time. No one is coming to your presentation just to pick it apart. No one is coming to a presentation just to make fun of you or to say mean things about how you speak. If they do that, guess what? You can go to the moderator and ask the moderator to eject that person, and the moderator had darn well better listen. If they don't, guess what? You get to report the moderator to the meeting organizers, and you might find yourself as a moderator on next year's meeting. Your goal in giving a presentation is really not to entertain the audience. Too many presenters think that their topic is boring Why are you presenting on a topic you think is boring? I don't know. But they think that means that they have to put in all these flashy animations and slide transitions and put a different background color on every slide and a different color for every word. No, 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 no. Your goal is not to entertain. Your goal is to inform people about the topic that they are interested in hearing about, right? You have information that they are interested in receiving. And so there is this wonderful relationship that you get to have with your audience for the next 5 to 15 minutes about you giving them the information that they want. That also means that they need to be able to follow your slides. So slides need a helpful arrangement. They need things like main points and subpoints. I am right now on a subpoint of the main point that slides need to be able to be followed. The next subpoint is about how slides need to last for 30 to 60 seconds. 30 to 60 seconds is the average amount of time that people need to spend on a slide. Anything less than 30 and the slides are flying past too quickly, anything more than 60 and the talk is kind of dragging on. Most importantly, though, the fact that your audience is interested means you can relax. You don't have to prove yourself to them. You don't have to entertain them. You are there to give them information that they have come to receive. Speaking of slides, let's talk about using the slides as your notes. Your slides are the reminder of what you need to say. They are also the roadmap for your audience. In other words, they are there to help you and to help your viewers. The best thing to do with your slides is to simply glance at each bullet to remind yourself of what to say, then make eye contact with your audience. The slides are not a script. They don't tell you word for word what to say. In general, we don't give scripted presentations in science and math. We give extemporaneous presentations where we have brief reminders of what to say, and then we talk about it with our audience. If you're tempted to use note cards, if you say, but I need my note cards to tell me what to say, whatever you would put on the note cards, put up on the slides. There's really no reason to have a difference between the two. If you have slides up on the screen and a set of note cards in your hand, the audience is going to wonder what secret information you've hidden away on those note cards that you're not willing to put up on the slide deck. Anything you would put in your note cards, put up there on the slide. Another common mistake I see in presentations is that students will put up at the end of a presentation a long list of references that no one is ever going to read. When you want to put in your references, just put citations here on the slide in a footnote. Another major rule that many beginning presenters break, and again, some established presenters break, is to follow the 8x8 rule. Here's what you imagine, is that your slide is an 8x8 grid. That means each slide gets a maximum of 8 lines. Any more than 8 lines, and the font starts to shrink too small. And going in the other direction, each line gets a maximum of 8 words. Anything more than that, and they're going to start running off onto the next line. Now, what do you do if your slides are too long? What if you make up your slide and it's got 12 lines on it, and you need all 12 of those lines? Guess what? If you have a slide with 12 lines, you now get to make 2 slides with 6 lines each. All you have to do, duplicate that slide, start carving out the lines that need to go together, and you've got yourself 2 slides. You also need visuals. I notice I do not have any visuals here, but at least I have a handy dandy webcam. The important thing to note here is that your visuals need to be relevant to the slide, meaning not just there to take up space, but there to actually engage the audience. And your visuals need to be visible. There's no point in putting up a graph if people can't read the axes. This is incredibly important in science and math because we use visuals to tell the story. We rely primarily on our graphs and our diagrams, not so much on the word-for-word description of what things are. Finally, you need to know how to end well. The thing that you need to end with is a conclusions slide. A conclusion slide should be a restatement of your outline, maybe with a little bit more detail. So really what that means is when you're making your presentation, make the body first, then the intro, then the conclusions, because your conclusions need to be a copy-paste of your outline with a little bit more information added. The reason you want your conclusions up is because you want to have it up during the Q&A session. During Q&A, I know that's a part where people are incredibly nervous, but you can really help yourself during the Q&A by leaving your conclusions up. The reason is it gives your audience something to read and think about so that they can ask specific, informed questions about your presentation. If you end on a blank screen, or if you end on a slide that says questions, or if you end on a slide that says thanks, or if you end on a slide that has acknowledgments, or goodness help you, a bibliography that no one's ever going to read. The problem is that then you're not giving them anything to think about. If I'm staring at a blank screen and I'm in the audience, I don't remember what the presentation was about. I don't know what kind of question to ask. So I just kind of reach in and throw one out there, and it may not be a good question. If you have your conclusion slide up at the end, people can ask specific questions. So like I said, no blank screen, no questions, no thanks, no acknowledgments, no bibliography. Again, no one's going to read it. A conclusion slide is there to help the audience reflect on what you've talked about and to ask informed questions. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. We talked about what every presenter needs. We talked about how you need a title slide and about how titles should have a purpose and a scope. We talked about how you need an outline slide. This is basically your section headers throughout the presentation. We talked about you need to know that your audience is interested so you can relax. We talked about how you need to use the slides as your notes. And if it's something you need to remember, then add it to the slides. We talked about following the 8x8 rule. Just do it. No exceptions. We talked about needing visuals. Again, make them useful. And finally, we talked about how to end well on a conclusion slide just like this, which I would leave up at the end to take questions. Also, the conclusion slide is a great place to add your QR code back up, because a lot of times people don't realize they want your slides until the end of the presentation. So it's helpful to have that QR code on the first slide and on the last slide. And now finally comes the end of the presentation. You don't need any big dramatic statement. You don't need to take a bow. You don't need a joke. All you need to say is, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. I would be happy to take questions.